Hello, Black College sports fans. Welcome to the Black College Sports Report. I'm Nwandi Lawson. The conferences are tightening up in the SWAC, the CIAA, and the MEAC. A couple of upsets in one, and just pure competition for the others. While in the SIAC, Tuskegee says it doesn't matter who we play or the occasion. We are the team to beat, and they prove that. We'll have the Golden Tigers Wildcats game for you. The Mighty Rams were knocked off, and the Mighty Aggies just fell off. We'll also have those games for you, and the unpredictability of Black College sports. That's Rick Moore's topic on the Black College Sports Beat. Plus all the scores, schedules, polls, and much more on Week 9 of the Black College Sports Report.
The Black College Sports Report is made possible by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcast. Additional financial support is provided by these great public radio stations: WCLK in Atlanta, Georgia; KCEP in Las Vegas, Nevada; WEAA in Baltimore, Maryland; KPVU Radio in Prairie View, Texas; WCSU Radio in Wilberforce, Ohio; WVAS in Montgomery, Alabama; WJAB in Huntsville, Alabama; and KTSU in Houston, Texas. Other support provided by loyal listeners like you.
High-flying Aggies, low-flying Bison. For the Aggies, this stop at Howard University in Washington, D.C. was just that, a stop. But wait, Coach Steve Wilson and the low-flying Bison sent a message. If you stop here, you might get beat. So it was. The mighty Aggies of North Carolina A&T went down to defeat to the Bison of Howard University. Bill Franklin witnessed this huge upset.
Way back in early August at Picture and Meet the Aggie Press Day 2000, Aggie head football coach Bill Hayes talked about all the teams in the MEAC, and the one team he thought would give his Aggies all they could handle. It was Howard University. So we all went to Washington, D.C. to find out. And so did 9,872 fans on hand at Green Stadium on the campus of Howard University. The Aggies would score first with a 22-yard field goal by Darren Dawkins, but the Bison came right back with a well-orchestrated 7-play, 80-yard drive as Howard quarterback Bobby Townsend finally connected with wideout Sean Miller for a 17-yard score. The Bison would lead 7-3 after one. In the second quarter, Howard University place kicker Charles Card nailed a 29-yard field goal to end a 10-play, 34-yard drive. Howard University head coach Steve Wilson, who is distantly related to Aggie coach Bill Hayes, would try everything legal in football to win. The wishbone attack, stalling tactics, 6 different running backs, the kitchen sink, and finally prayer. Hey, it worked. The Aggies fumbled a pitch out from quarterback Jason Battle to the usually sure-handed running back Maurice Hicks, and the Bison recovered with 1 minute and 5 seconds to play near midfield. 5 plays later, 2 former high school teammates from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, running back Tariq Rice and Jameel Jackson, would complete a 17-yard Hail Mary halfback option pass. Place kicker Charles Card would add on the point after attempt, and the Bison would complete the unthinkable, giving the Bison only their second win of the season, 17-16, an upset over the Aggies of North Carolina A&T. Bill Hayes really knew what he was talking about. This is Bill Franklin reporting from Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Bill. The Bears of Morgan State and the Hornets of Delaware State met head-to-head last Saturday afternoon with a total of 0 MEAC wins between them. But on this day, things would change. One would and one would not. Lamont Germany was in Dover.
If you were to whip out the calculator and added up all the MEAC wins the Del State Hornets and the Morgan State Bears had coming into their Saturday afternoon encounter, you'd have a grand total of 0. Neither Morgan nor Delaware State have had a single MEAC win all season long. First quarter started harmless enough as neither team was able to do much on offense. So I guess it was appropriate that the first score of the game came courtesy of the defense. The Morgan State defense found the end zone after Delaware State quarterback Rashawn Matthews threw a pass that he wishes he could have back. The Bears missed the point after touchdown and had to settle for a 6-0 cushion. The Morgan touchdown did quiet the Hornet crowd as they saw their team fall behind early. But the deficit didn't last too long. On the very next Hornet possession, they finally got that offense moving, and a 65-yard drive ended in a Graylin King touchdown run. The Hornets made their extra point, and they took a 7-6 lead into the second quarter. But the teams took turns turning the ball over in the second stanza. Neither squad was able to sustain a drive. Delaware State's quarterback Rashawn Matthews threw 3 interceptions, and Morgan's quarterbacks threw a couple of picks, and the Bears coughed the ball up a couple of times. All of that made for a scoreless second quarter, and the Hornets maintained their slim 7-6 lead going into the second half. In the third quarter, the Hornets made the Bears pay on their very first possession as Tommy Mims found the end zone on a 22-yard end around. And the 14-6 cushion is all the Hornets would need, as the Bear offense had very little to offer for the remainder of the day. When the final gun sounded, the Hornets had their first MEAC win of the year, while the Bears are still looking for their first conference win in 2 years. They didn't find it in Delaware. The final from Alumni Field, the Delaware State University Hornets 20, the Morgan State University Bears 12. I'm Lamont Germany in Dover, Delaware.
Thanks, Lamont. Here's how the MEAC played last weekend. Florida A&M rolled over Norfolk State 42-14. Delaware State defeated Morgan State 20-12. Howard beat North Carolina A&T 17-16, and Hampton beat South Carolina State 40-37. This weekend, the action in the MEAC looks this way. It's homecoming for Delaware State when they take on South Carolina State in Dover, Delaware. Florida A&M meets Hampton in its homecoming game in Tallahassee, Florida. It's homecoming for Howard when they take on Norfolk State in Washington, D.C. North Carolina A&T meets Bethune-Cookman for its homecoming game in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Morgan State takes on Western Illinois in Macomb, Illinois. At your home, your homecoming, the so-called championship game, it doesn't seem to matter to the Golden Tigers of Tuskegee. The game billed as the SIAC championship game in Fort Valley, Georgia, and homecoming for the Wildcats was a thriller for the 15,000 plus on hand, but in the end, Tuskegee ruled. Jim DeWitt has this report.
Tuskegee University proved it has more lives than an alley cat as the Golden Tigers almost blew a 38-14 third quarter lead, but hung on to defeat Fort Valley State 38-35 and take over the lead in the SIAC. Fort Valley State took the early lead in the game when Cleo Stinyard scored on a 7-yard run, and Josh Beers kicked the point to make it 7-0. Tuskegee came right back, moving 83 yards in 10 plays as Matthew Hazel scored on a 4-yard run, and Jason Lee kicked the point for a 7-7 tie. Fort Valley State answered in the first minute of the second quarter as Deron Croson ran in from 4 yards out, and Beers kicked the point to give the Wildcats a 14-7 lead. Tuskegee took the ensuing kickoff and launched a 12-play, 85-yard march, capped by quarterback Aaron James's 5-yard scoring pass to fullback John Brown. Lee kicked the point for a 14-14 tie. Then the wheels came off the Wildcat offensive machine, and Tuskegee quickly capitalized on a Fort Valley fumble and a pass interception. Severon Zachary scored the go-ahead touchdown on a 9-yard run, and Lee's kick gave Tuskegee a 21-14 lead. Moments later, following Kelvin Powell's pick of a Brian Villanueva pass, James scored on a 1-yard run, and Jeffrey Stanton ran in a 2-point conversion to give Tuskegee a 29-14 lead with 48 seconds to play in the first half. Defensive back Roosevelt Williams picked off another Villanueva pass, and Cotton Kimball scored 2 plays later on a 13-yard pass from James. The PAT failed, and Tuskegee led 35-14 at intermission. Fort Valley State roared back, and suddenly Fort Valley State trailed 38-29 with 6:16 left to play in the game. Villanueva found Anthony Sneed open for a 35-yard touchdown pass with 1:23 left in the game, but a 2-point conversion attempt failed, and Tuskegee was clinging to a 38-35 lead with 1:23 left to play. Still, the Wildcats were not through. Fort Valley State recovered the ensuing onside kick and rode the arm of Villanueva down to the Tuskegee 1-yard line before Jones's heroics ended that dramatic homecoming finish. Villanueva threw the ball 57 times, completed 34, had 3 passes intercepted. The Wildcats won the battle but lost the war. Fort Valley State had 487 yards in total offense. Tuskegee totaled 344 yards on 56 snaps. Tuskegee now 7-0. Fort Valley State now drops to 7-2. In Fort Valley, Georgia, I'm Jim DeWitt.
Thanks, Jim. It was homecoming for the Maroon Tigers of Morehouse College, and it was turnovers and more turnovers for the Dragons of Lane College. Morehouse went into the game with a winning record and looked to add one more win to their record. Hal Lamar was in Atlanta.
It was homecoming for Morehouse College, and for the first time in several years, they reached this point in the season with a winning record and were determined to tack on one more victory. It would not be that easy, however, against the Dragons with first-year coach Eric Carter. Morehouse scored first with 6:36 to go, first period, but on the ensuing kickoff, Jamel Smith returned for 101 yards, which brought most of the 12,000 in attendance to their feet, tied the score at 7. But Lane's big problem during the game was turnovers. They fumbled twice and were intercepted twice. In 2 instances, Morehouse managed to score in the second and fourth periods. But again, the Morehouse defense took home the game ball and even contributed some points of their own when linebacker John Grant trapped Lane's Jacoby Ward in the end zone for a safety. In the fourth period, with 1:11 remaining, Lane pulled to within 5 points of the Morehouse lead, with Ward connected with Owen Macklin from the 5-yard line. Lane's poor attempt to an onside kick allowed Morehouse to gain possession at the Lane 44, and then with 1:06 remaining, quarterback Chilvaric Daughtry allowed time to elapse. The real story of this victory was running back Nathaniel Zachary for Morehouse. He rushed 17 times for 126 yards and scored once. Daughtry, usually a leader in the rushing and passing department, was weak, completing only 5 of his 20 passing attempts for 54 yards. Lane, at 2-6 and 1-4 in conference play, will return to Jackson, Tennessee to face Miles as a homecoming opponent, while Morehouse, with a 2-2 conference mark, travels to Frankfort, Kentucky to battle the Thoroughbreds of Kentucky State. Once again, the final score, Morehouse winning homecoming over the Lane Dragons, 22-17. This is Hal Lamar in Atlanta.
Thanks, Hal. Here's how the SIAC played last weekend. Tuskegee defeated Fort Valley State 38-35. Miles rolled over Benedict 49-10. Morehouse beat Lane 22-17, and Kentucky State beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 34-30. This weekend in the SIAC, the Greater LaGrange Classic pits Clark Atlanta against Tuskegee in LaGrange, Georgia. Kentucky State meets Morehouse in Frankfort, Kentucky. It's homecoming for Lane when they take on Miles in Jackson, Tennessee. And Fort Valley State meets Savannah State in Savannah, Georgia. It's time to take a look at the top 15 poll for this week of Black College football. The Black College Sports Report poll is compiled by Black College Sports Information Directors and by the staffs of the Onadan Group, the Black College Sports Page, and Golden Communications Incorporated. The top 15 poll looks this way. In the number 15 position, Morehouse. Number 14, Jackson State. Number 13, Alabama A&M. Number 12, Winston-Salem State. Number 11, Fort Valley State. Number 10, Virginia State. Number 9, Virginia Union. Number 8, Alabama State. Number 7, Florida A&M. Number 6, North Carolina A&T. Number 5, Tuskegee. Number 4, Hampton. Number 3, Grambling. Number 2, Texas Southern. And the number 1 team in Black College football for the week ending October 28, 2000 is the Wildcats of Bethune-Cookman. It's time for the weekly trivia question, which happens to be my favorite part of the show. Here's this week's question. What was the first NCAA-sanctioned HBCU postseason bowl game? That's an easy one. We'll have the answer at the end of the show. You can find all the Black College sports action and find all the scores on our pop-up screen by visiting our website at www.golden2000.com. That's www.golden2000.com. Or you can email us at bcsports@golden2000.com. Coming up, the CIAA, the SWAC, the Independents, and of course, Rick Moore on the Black College Sports Beat. I'm Nwandi Lawson, and you're listening to the Black College Sports Report. It was a show of the quarterbacks in the game between the Tigers of Grambling State and the Tigers of Jackson State. Both QBs passed for 300-plus yards, but the Tigers of Grambling got the best of the QB duel, and the game with a little help from the foot. Lute Williams reports on the game of the Tigers.
Quarterbacks Robert Kent and Randy Himes put on 300-yard passing shows, but it was Grambling place kicker Lauren Richmond who was the difference Saturday as the Grambling Tigers knocked off Jackson State 33-30. Jackson State's Kent hit on 22 of 32 passes for 382 yards and 2 TDs. His first, a 90-yarder to Lawrence Story to open the scoring. He later hit Tim Manning from 24 yards out just before halftime to give the Tigers a 16-10 lead at the break. That lead grew to 22-10 when Kendrick Travis blocked a JSU punt and returned it 8 yards for a score to open the second half scoring. But that's when Himes went to work. Himes, who hit on 26 of 47 tosses for 342 yards on the day, led the G-men on 3 straight scoring drives that he culminated with scoring passes of 42, 11, and 18 yards that gave Grambling a 30-22 lead early in the fourth quarter. Kent answered that with a 10-play, 80-yard drive that he ended with a 1-yard TD run. He then hit former quarterback T.C. Taylor for a 2-point conversion to tie the game at 30 with just 3:41 left. But Himes had the last word, leading the Bengal Tigers on an 8-play, 42-yard drive, capped off with Richmond's 30-yard field goal with just 8 seconds left. The win by Doug Williams' Grambling squad, now at 7-1 overall and 4-0 in the SWAC Western Division, does not count towards their conference record, but it does snap a 5-game losing streak to JSU and further confirms his team's status as a serious contender for the 2000 SWAC title. I'm Luke Williams reporting.
It was no contest for the Tigers of Texas Southern as they met the Delta Devils of Mississippi Valley State for the second annual George Foreman Classic. The game was a knockout. Bambi Hall was there.
Texas Southern hosted Mississippi Valley State in the second annual George Foreman Classic. The Tigers, hoping to contend for the Southwestern Athletic Conference title, were looking to extend their winning streak to 7-0. TSU was caught by surprise, though, with the return of running back Corey Holmes. Holmes, who suffered a high ankle sprain in the Delta Devils' first game of the season against Louisiana Tech, returned with a vengeance. He got the Tigers for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns on 33 carries. TSU struggled in the first half trying to contain Holmes and to get their shotgun offense to fire, but a couple of misfires and penalties held the Tigers to a 10-10 tie score at halftime. On their second possession of the third quarter, the Delta Devils started on their own 14-yard line. The first play saw Holmes break out for an 86-yard touchdown, and Mississippi Valley took the lead for the second time with 11 minutes and 2 seconds on the clock. With 3 minutes and 51 seconds remaining in the third quarter, Tiger quarterback Adam Lamb rushed for 6 yards to even up the score once again. Less than a minute later, TSU defensive back Oliver Celestine intercepted Jason Howard's pass and returned it for a 26-yard touchdown, the biggest play of the game. The Tigers scored once again at the top of the fourth quarter when Alvin Owens pulled in a 6-yard pass from Lamb. The Delta Devils kept fighting, though. They scored with less than 2 minutes left to go in the game when Howard hit Dante Boatman 39 yards out. The final score was the TSU Tigers 30, Mississippi Valley State 24. Ben Moore had 12 tackles for the Delta Devils. Celestine finished with 8 tackles, 1 for a loss of 7 yards, plus his interception return. Preseason All-America and All-SWAC linebacker Leonard Mack garnered 12 tackles, 3 for a loss of 15 yards, 1 forced fumble, and 1 10-yard sack for the Tigers. TSU gets ready to rumble with Grambling next week in San Antonio, Texas in the Alamo Dome for the first annual Alamo City Classic. That game will decide who shows up in Birmingham, Alabama, December 2nd, representing the West in the SWAC Championship. I'm Bambi Hall, reporting from Houston, Texas.
Thanks, Bambi. Here's how the SWAC played last weekend. Prairie View A&M fell to Illinois State 64-0. Grambling beat Jackson State 33-30. Southern defeated Alcorn State 30-14. Texas Southern beat Mississippi Valley State 30-24. And Arkansas Pine Bluff fell to Kentucky State 34-30. This is a big weekend in the SWAC, featuring the 59th Magic City Classic between Alabama State and Alabama A&M in Birmingham, Alabama. Arkansas Pine Bluff takes on Jackson State in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It's homecoming at Mississippi Valley State when they take on Prairie View A&M in Itta Bena, Mississippi. And it's homecoming for Southern when they meet Morris Brown in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it's the Tiger Paw Classic pitting Texas Southern against Grambling in San Antonio, Texas.
CIAA.
It was a senior day and a homecoming to remember in Petersburg, Virginia, as the Trojans of Virginia State ran over the CIAA defending champions, the Rams of Winston-Salem State. The Trojans did the damage in the fourth quarter, breaking a 13-all tie to halt the Rams' 14-game CIAA winning streak. Sean Robertson was in Petersburg.
On the campus of Virginia State University, the Trojans again had a fourth quarter comeback under their sleeve as they defeated the defending CIAA champions, the Rams of Winston-Salem State, on senior day here at Rogers Stadium. Damon Red Thompson did not break the Division II all-time record, but it was the pass receiving skills of Robert Coles who led the way for the Trojans. 5 receptions for 105 yards and 1 touchdown for Virginia State University. The game concluded with Antonio Hawkins on a 2-yard quarterback sneak with 32 seconds left in the ball game to give the Trojans a 20-13 victory. Winston-Salem State was held to 245 yards of total offense, limiting the number one rusher in the CIAA, Terry Newkirk, with 22 carries for only 64 yards, his longest being 11 yards today. Virginia State University is now 3-1 in the CIAA and will look to play Virginia Union next week for the CIAA Eastern Division Championship on the line at Gold Bowl 2000 in Richmond, Virginia. Reporting from Rogers Stadium on Virginia State University's campus, I'm Sean Robertson.
Thanks, Sean. Here's how the CIAA played last weekend. Livingstone beat Elizabeth City State 34-22. Fayetteville State defeated Johnson C. Smith 34-33. Virginia Union rolled over North Carolina Central 30-6. Virginia State beat Winston-Salem State 20-13. And Bowie State fell to Morehead State 56-14. This weekend in the CIAA, Elizabeth City State takes on Benedict in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's homecoming at Fayetteville State when they face Bowie State in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Johnson C. Smith meets Winston-Salem State in its homecoming in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's homecoming for Livingstone when they face off with North Carolina Central in Salisbury, North Carolina. And Virginia Union meets Virginia State in the 24th Gold Bowl in Richmond, Virginia. They are not the Tigers of 1 year ago. As a matter of fact, who are these Tigers of Tennessee State? It was definitely an uphill battle against the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky. As a matter of fact, it was straight up or down. Rob Blackman witnessed this slaughter.
About the only thing Tennessee State football fans had to cheer about Saturday was a late touchdown that kept the Big Blue from suffering their worst defeat in school history. Western Kentucky, taking advantage of 5 TSU turnovers, drubbed the homestanding Tigers 52-14. Western Kentucky, ranked 10th nationally in Division I AA, had to travel only 7 yards for their first touchdown with 9:53 remaining in the opening period thanks to a TSU fumbled punt return. Things only got worse for the Big Blue when a Kenton Evans interception led to another Hilltopper score, and by halftime, Tennessee State trailed 28-0 and had yet to step foot inside Western Kentucky territory. Western Kentucky eventually opened up a 52-0 lead before Tennessee State scored 2 late, meaningless touchdowns. The final stats would lead some to believe TSU was much more competitive than a 52-14 score. The Tigers amassed 315 yards of total offense compared to Western's 300 yards, but an interception returned for a touchdown, a blocked punt recovered for a touchdown, and 117 yards worth of drive-killing penalties kept TSU from staying close. Tennessee State falls to 2-5 overall and will now need a minor miracle to win a 3rd straight Ohio Valley Conference championship as their league record slips to 1-2. Western Kentucky now stands at a perfect 7-0 and 6-0 atop the OVC. Up next for the Big Blue Tigers, a Thursday night showdown at Eastern Kentucky. Again, the final, Western Kentucky 52, Tennessee State 14. In Nashville, I'm Rob Blackman reporting.
Thanks, Rob. Here's how the Independents played last Saturday. Tennessee State fell to Western Kentucky 52-14. Cheney lost to Kutztown State 35-12. West Virginia State fell to Shepherd College 44-8. Morris Brown beat Savannah State 30-14. Benedict fell to Miles 49-10, and Langston beat Lincoln, Missouri 27-19. This weekend in the Independents, it's homecoming for Benedict when they face Elizabeth City State in Charlotte, North Carolina. Cheney meets East Stroudsburg in Cheney, Pennsylvania. Lincoln, Missouri plays Haskell in Lincoln, Missouri. Savannah State takes on Fort Valley State in Savannah, Georgia. Morris Brown meets Southern in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Stillman plays Cowan in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Langston meets Southwest Assemblies of God in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and West Virginia State plays Concord in Institute, West Virginia. On the Black College Sports Beat with Rick Moore, Rick reports on more round ball activities and the unpredictability of Black College sports. Here's Rick.
Hello, everybody. Rick Moore here with you once again on the Black College Sports Beat. And if you weren't sure about the unpredictability of Black College football, hopefully this past weekend has let you know how things can change. Back in September, Florida A&M shut out Howard University 43-0. And a couple of weeks ago, North Carolina A&T beat Florida A&M 30-10. And lo and behold, last week, Howard University upsets North Carolina A&T by a point. So now, FAM has beat Howard. Howard has beat A&T. A&T has beat FAM. And it continues. Over in the CIAA, you've got North Carolina Central beating Virginia State back in September. Winston-Salem State comes to town and beats up on North Carolina Central. Then Winston-Salem State goes to Petersburg and loses to Virginia State. So North Carolina Central beats Virginia State, who beats Winston-Salem, who beats North Carolina Central. The unpredictability of Black College sports. You never know, so you have to show up to the games because, as Johnson C. Smith found out, even with a 27-0 lead at the half, you can still lose the football game. The Southwestern Athletic Conference has announced its preseason players to watch. On the women's side, Sharia Wood of Alcorn State University has been picked as the Player of the Year in SWAC women's hoops. Alcorn State is picked to win the women's championship over Grambling State. Third place pick was Alabama State. Over on the men's side, the preseason Player of the Year in SWAC hoops is Marcus Fleming, also of Alcorn State University. Alcorn State is also picked to win the men's championship in the SWAC. Number 2 team pick was Alabama State, followed by Mississippi Valley, Prairie View A&M, Southern, Alabama A&M, Texas Southern, Jackson State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Grambling State. Should be an interesting year in SWAC hoops. I'm Rick Moore on the Black College Sports Beat.
Thanks, Rick. And by the way, happy birthday. That's all the time we have for the Black College Sports Report. Do you have the answer to the trivia question? What was the first NCAA-sanctioned HBCU postseason bowl game? According to the Black College Sports Encyclopedia, it's the Heritage Bowl, which was started in 1991 and ended last year.
The Black College Sports Report is made possible by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcast and by loyal listeners like you. Our production partners are WCLK Radio in Atlanta, Georgia, KCEP Radio in Las Vegas, Nevada, KPVU Radio in Prairie View, Texas, WEAA in Baltimore, Maryland, WCSU Radio in Wilberforce, Ohio, WVAS Radio in Montgomery, Alabama, WJAB in Huntsville, Alabama, and KTSU Radio in Houston, Texas.
The executive producer of the Black College Sports Report is Rosine Bailey. Producer is Terrence Bailey. News director is Eric Moore. Production coordinator is Stephanie Hurt. Engineer is Tom Spencer. And the editor is Marquis Lofton. I'm Wandy Lawson. See you next week for the Black College Sports Report.